Good evening. Welcome to the August 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. Actually, this is a meeting of the Stillwater Utilities Authority. And at this point, I will call this meeting to order. We have two items on the agenda. First up, David Barth will talk to us about considering a bid award for Utility Field Services, LLC, for Caw Pipeline waterline repairs.
Right. Good evening, trustees. David Barth with City Engineering here tonight to discuss the bid results for the raw waterline repair project. There we go. I was waiting for it to come up on the screen. So let me get the right thing in front of me here. So we currently have 4 known leaks on the Caw pipeline between our water treatment plant and the Caw reservoir. On this cover slide, you can see that there are 3 pictures, and those are three of the 4 leaks. And so on the left side there, that's the more complicated leak that we have to fix. It's inside of an encasing pipe because this is where our water line crosses underneath Highway 177. And we are pretty sure that the leak is somewhere between that hole that you see there in the ground and the highway. And so it's going to be a complicated effort to dig through rock. We've got overhead electric. We've got several challenges here. And so that's one of the reasons why we had to hire this out, was due to the complexity of this particular leak. Also, we've got a staffing shortage at the water treatment plant. Normally we would have people in-house that would fix these leaks. Or fix the more routine ones, which are like the other 3. But because of the complexity of this one and the other 3, we're having to hire these out. If you look on the right side of this slide, you can see 2 other wet areas. The upper right-hand corner, that leak is not producing as much water at the surface, but you can stand right over it and you can hear the pipeline just hissing. And it's probably 4 or 5 feet below the surface of the earth there. And then we've got our next lower right-hand corner there. You can see a larger area that's inundated. That's probably, maybe an area that's 15 by 15. And that's a much larger leak, and that's the one that we're going to repair first. So we put together a project, and we advertised this on July 16th. We had 2 bidders that submitted bids. Utility Field Services was, which is out of Chandler, Oklahoma, is the low bidder. And with that, I'll ask if you have any questions before I recommend a motion.
Trustees, any questions? So, David, this bid is to repair all 4 of these leaks?
Yes, sir.
And what's the time frame?
So, good question. If you all award this tonight, they've told me that they can get us a signed agreement to us in the next couple of days with the bonds. And then, of course, we'll get Norman to sign it, and then we'll get a meeting scheduled to kick it off, and hopefully they'll start within the next 2 weeks.
And I mean, how long do you think it'll take them?
So that's a good question. So we're limited on when we can take our pipeline down and how long we can take it down, but I would say that they should be able to take care of all of these leaks within 30 to 45 days.
Okay. Good. I'm trying to remember back to last time we had a bid like this. I think like you said, we normally have done these kind of repairs in-house.
Yes.
How often would you say we're doing a repair of this nature, or we have over the last several years?
I cannot remember. I think we've had 20, maybe 25 leaks in the last few years. I mean, we've had several.
So this isn't out of the ordinary?
It's not out of the ordinary, no. And, we're kind of noticing a pattern with the leaks. They're appearing at joints. So we're in fact, when we look at this with our consultants and in the future projects that we're going to do on the pipeline, we're thinking about, is there some planned rehabilitation that we need to do at each of the pipe joints? I mean, that seems like a lot of work, but it's much cheaper than replacing the whole pipeline.
Okay. Well, I just wanted clarification because, like I said, we don't normally see these.
Right.
When you guys have to go out and do these repairs, we don't have it presented to us as a bid, and so folks who are watching may not realize that this isn't necessarily a an odd thing that we have to go out and make spot repairs on the pipeline.
Exactly. No, we it's our raw water line, so it's a little bit different than our lines in distribution where, if we have a leak in our raw water line, we want to get it repaired as quickly as possible, but it's not actually causing an outage to our customers, like an outage that we have in our distribution system.
Mm-hmm.
And David mentioned it, but this one is really complicated because it's in the sleeve, or what do you call it?
It's encased.
Encased.
Yeah.
Under the highway, so part of that has to be cut away without cutting away the pipe, and it's...
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Trustees, any further questions? What's your recommendation for us, David?
Sure. Recommend that you award the bid to Utility Field Services LLC in the amount of $356,000. Authorize staff to execute the construction contract. Authorize $409,400 in total expenditures, which includes construction and a contingency, and approve the related budget amendment.
Thank you. Trustees?
One modification, the minutes need to reflect authorizing the general manager to sign the contract documents.
Thank you. With that modification, trustees, is there a motion?
I move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommended motion. Please vote. That's approved with a vote of 5-0. All right, now we have a general discussion next up on the agenda of city water projects.
Okay, so again, David Barth from City Engineering. This is an update to the trustees on where we are with our improvements to the raw water delivery system and the water treatment plant. So as we've presented previously, our action plan has two tracks, improvements at the water treatment plant. And if you see on the top track there, that top box says confirmed water treatment plant improvements. Those are projects that you all authorized last December. We're currently in design of those projects, and we will hopefully be bidding them in the spring. On the lower track, you see there additional raw water storage. Again, our team of consultants recommended Lake McMurtry for that solution, and you all supported that in March. And so we're working with our consultants to scope that out, and we want to get started on it right away. Additionally, we just advertised a project to replace the cathodic protection system that's on our CAW pipeline, both the raw water and the finished water portions of that, as well as some other facilities. And we hope to open bids for that project in early September. So we're excited about that project. It will help us. But tonight, I want to just focus on where we're going to go from here. So last September, our team of consultants recommended a plan that we shared with you that included a new water treatment plant that was capable of producing 24 million gallons per day. And you can see a schematic of that in the upper left-hand corner of this slide. They recommended additional raw water storage, which we're already pursuing at Lake McMurtry. And they also recommended that we make some improvements to our raw water delivery system. And that meant, at that time, was replacing the pipe on the CAW pipeline in 4 surge zones, as well as upgrading our CAW pump station. The estimated cost of those projects was $350 to $400 million. So again, staff began looking at ways to fund this project. We started applying for grants, and what I can tell you is that we've secured about $40 million. Now that's not in grants. Some of it is in grants, some of it's in a congressional directive. About half of it is what we have in our water fund reserves. So we have about $40 million set aside for this project, which is about 11% of $350 million. So I will also tell you that we applied for several larger funding opportunities, and we just weren't fortunate enough to win those. You might have seen that the state, had I think I looked on a website today, there were 1,400 projects and $18 billion of things identified by the state for pandemic relief, and I think our state got a fraction of that. So it wasn't as much to go around. But we will continue to look for opportunities as they come about. So we had to step back and look at how can we continue to reliably provide safe, clean drinking water to the community now and in the future. And we've come up with a phased improvement plan that is in line with what we can afford now. So this slide, and you have copies of this in front of you, and so I want to spend a few minutes on this slide, is our phased improvement plan. And this wasn't just something that we came up with. Actually, our previous consultant on this, associated with projects at the water treatment plant in Black and Veatch, made these recommendations, as well as our team at Carollo. So you can see we've got color-coded here our highest priority projects and our medium priority projects. And those confirmed system projects that I mentioned earlier, those are the ones in green. So starting at the left side, you can see we've got the recovered water pump station, lagoon improvements. Then we're going to add a new caustic feed system, this green circle up here at the top, a new finished water pump station that's towards the lower left, and then the cathodic protection system. And so those projects, with the exception of the cathodic protection project, the rest of them are being designed right now, and we will bid those in the spring. Our next priority is to get the additional raw water storage set up at Lake McMurtry. So this is a pipeline that extends from the water treatment plant to Lake McMurtry and a pump station at Lake McMurtry. And so really, this is any improvements that we want to make to the raw water delivery system that we have hinge upon us having either this additional raw water storage at Lake McMurtry, and this also provides us with a backup supply. So what this means is we'll be able to take the call pipeline out of service for extended periods of time to do maintenance and upgrades. We'll be able to defer improvements to the call pipeline for increased capacity needs in the future, and also defer improvements to the call pump station. So we need to get that going as soon as possible, and so we're scoping that out with our consultants right now. So I'm hoping that we'll come back very soon to you, asking you to authorize an amendment to start with design. The next set of improvements, and these are ones that we want to start with right away, are the ones in yellow. So if you look, starting at the left here, we've got our ozone system that needs to be upgraded. Our carbon dioxide system needs to be upgraded. The lime system, where this kind of all started about 6 years ago, this project, the lime system needs to be completely replaced. And then our chlorine and ammonia system needs to be upgraded. After we complete those projects, we'll move towards upgrading our solids contact units, which are shown on there as SCUs, upgrading the filters, and replacing the steel clear well. The last part of this is that we need to plan ahead for our call pipeline, where it crosses 7 key features, and it makes repair there more difficult. So our call pipeline currently crosses the Arkansas River twice underneath the riverbed. It crosses underneath a portion of Sooner Lake, underneath the Cimarron Turnpike, and 3 other locations. And so what we need to do is start planning now or when we need to add parallel sections of pipeline. So that means trying to acquire the easements that we need from those property owners and doing the conceptual alignment of where that pipeline would go. We think if we have the funding and staff, we can do all of what you see here in the next 5 to 6 years. Obviously, if we don't get the funding as fast, then it's going to take a little longer.
You can do the highest and medium priority, or the highest?
All of it,
Okay.
Highest and medium, yes.
Thank you.
So, as we said last summer, this is a 50-year plan, and so we thought it was important to show you that, you know, as we go through time, demand is only going to increase here. And if you look at the bottom right number on this slide here, it shows that in the year 2070, the projected demand is over 30 million gallons per day. That 30 million gallons per day is not every day. It's the peak demand that you'd see on the hottest, driest day of the year, or it's increased demand like you'd see in some freak event like Winter Storm Uri, where everybody's dripping their faucets, and we've got several mainline breaks in town, and so we're, got more water leaving the system.
To set context, do you know what your biggest day ever was?
Biggest day ever?
Yes.
No idea.
I mean, this is obviously way bigger than what we're doing now, so do we know?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've seen maybe 15 or 16. I think we've seen 15 or 16 million gallons per day.
Okay, so it's double. It's
Yes.
double what we're trying to prepare for.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, our average demand right now is around 7 million gallons per day. So if you just look at the average daily demand for the entire year. But yeah, we've had peaks that are up into the teens for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we wanted to point out that as we're upgrading this plant that we have and moving forward with this phased plan, that we are keeping in the back of our minds that we're going to have to make changes to meet demand in the future. And so this slide just shows you an idea for what the plant could look like in the year 2070. This isn't necessarily set in stone, but if we took our plant that we have today and we needed to add some additional facilities to increase capacity, so for example, solids contact unit, additional beds of filters, an ozone system, carbon dioxide, we'll be able to add on to the systems that we have with these new facilities. Now, these facilities that we're showing here are not included in that $171 million that I showed you earlier. That would be something else. But just so you know that we are planning, when we build these new things, for example, the new finished water pump station that we're designing now, it's going to be designed for an 18 million gallon per day capacity, because that's what our plant does. But if we need to, we can make adjustments. We can change out, for example, add another stage to the pumps or pull the pumps and put in new pumps. And we're not building a new building or adding new electronics, but we're just replacing pump components, and we can increase our capacity. So we're doing those sorts of things to plan for the future. Additionally, if we have another industrial customer that comes that would like a significant amount of water, we're going to have the flexibility to be able to put together a project to increase our demand. So I felt that was important to mention. So you probably noticed that 171 million is less than half of 350 million. So what's different? Last summer, they were proposing a new 24 million gallon per day plant. So that's all new plant now. We're not replacing with this phased improvement plan everything. Even in the next 5 to 6 years, there's some things that we're not replacing. We're still adding raw water storage, so that was part of their plan. Also their plan, I mentioned replacing the pipe in those 4 surge zones. That comprised 16 miles of our CAW pipeline. And so those surge zones were identified earlier, I think maybe in 2012, when they did a study and they looked at the areas in our pipeline where we have had pressure surges because we didn't have variable frequency drives on our pumps, or we didn't have air relief valves at the high points in our line. So since that time, about 6 years ago, we added variable frequency drives and air relief valves, on the CAW pipeline. And so, but they're just making this recommendation that this is something we might have to consider, because for 30 years, we didn't have those things to protect our pipeline from the surges due to pressure. So, and then improving the capacity of the CAW pump station was also part of that summer 2021 plan. So this phase plan, we're going to just rehabilitate the existing 18 MGD plant we have now and be able to increase it as we need to. We'll still be adding raw water storage at Lake McMurtry. We're only going to replace 1.4 miles of the CAW pipeline, and that's where those parallel sections are. And then we'll continue with other facility improvements as funding becomes available. For example, at some point we'll need a new administration building and lab for testing and that sort of thing. So how do we pay for this? As I mentioned earlier, we have about $40 million set aside, and that $40 million is made up of water fund reserves, which comes from customers paying their rates. We had about a little over $7 million remaining from Water 2040 loans. We did get an ARPA grant. We received a congressional directive, and we're planning to, hopefully submit for more of those. We can borrow money from the state. So the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, I guess it's the federal government, but it's administered by the state. Of course, bonds are an alternative, and we could institute customer surcharges or have rate increases to either pay for these improvements sooner or to pay back loans. So what are our next steps?
Dave,
Yes,
Before we move on from the funding discussion,
You bet.
I know you mentioned that we've gone out and looked for grants and talked about, what the funding sources are. How confident are you that we've turned over every rock and looked under every possible rock? I guess my analogy kind of fell apart there. Have we found everything we can find?
No, we continue to actively look, and we will continue to actively engage our legislators at state and national levels.
Who is doing the looking?
City manager's office, along with Shelley and our other grants coordinator, our paid grants person. So there are a number of people that are doing the looking.
it's our rock turning department.
But the finance portion of this,
I just know there's a lot of rocks, right? I mean, and right now, from the federal sources, you're depending on, if you're looking at EPA, if you're looking at economic development sorts of things, if you're looking, there's just so many different places that make these things available, and it's almost impossible. Now, I am subscribed to all these newsletters where I get to see all these cities getting all these millions of dollars for all these really cool projects, and every time I see one, I think, oh man, why didn't we get one of those? And not that we're not, right? We're out doing this actively and finding money, but it just there's a lot of funding out there, and I hope hopefully we can win some of those and bring some of that money in, because I think this is the kind of project that should be very attractive to many of those granting organizations.
I'd hope it would build too. You start to get one or more, and just kind of as a domino effect. You hopefully then that opens the doors for other grants and because they're seeing the progression and they're seeing the progress
Right. And
from
I think
spending.
as we, we're still going to have lots of opportunities to make improvements, even after we do all of this. You're still going to have the call pipeline, which is, it'll be much better once we have Lake McMurtry as a backup supply. But still, our greatest asset, I think, is that water supply that we have in Caw Lake. I've watched 3 national news stories in the last week on water shortages in the southwest part of the country, or in other parts of this country where we don't. That's not our issue here. We're so blessed to have the water rights that we have in Caw, but we've got to get it from Caw to here, and make sure that is a sustainable pipeline. And so if we get more grant funding, we'll look, once we have Lake McMurtry in place, then we can start replacing sections of that pipeline that are most vulnerable.
So you're saying there's no shortage of things to spend money on?
That is exactly right.
I would also add the money that's coming in with the infrastructure bill. It's started, but most of that funding is on a 5-year cycle. So if we don't get it this year, I think there's opportunities in following years to continue to pursue those dollars and have, shovel-ready projects or projects that are almost shovel-ready for that. So, and I think too, maybe looking at opportunities. I think so much of the infrastructure bill is asking us to look at infrastructure projects with a little more of an aspirational idea. So how do we make a water line or make these water treatment plant improvements, but make them sustainable or increase resiliency in our region, look at it from a regional perspective. I think those are all really important opportunities as we're looking at grants and talking to our state and federal legislators.
we have looked at it on a regional basis, and in fact, the matter is we serve 71,000 people in one form or another, either finished water or raw water. In addition, we have 2 other communities that have approached us about service because they have no water supply close by. So those are all things that we are emphasizing when we are making these asks. That $10 million that came from the EPA was a direct result of our ask last year. So we will continue those efforts, and hopefully at some point we'll get a yes.
maybe the phasing that you've done, that might help with grant funding also,
Yeah,
being able to ask for smaller increments.
right, instead of asking for 350 million all at once.
Yeah.
And we did that.
Hey, you
too.
never get it if you don't ask for it, right?
That's right.
Do we have any concerns about the long-term viability of the Cog Reservoir as a primary water supply? Mary's getting ready to catch on, I'm imagining, I guess Ponca probably is using it. I'm concerned it might get overpromised.
I don't see that we have those concerns. I mean, our rights there are 50 million gallons per day. So, yeah, Enid is, sticking a straw into the lake. I'm not sure what other communities are doing, but those are the rights that we have. And so I think as long as we're, taking the water that we need and planning for upgrading that system, taking care of, we've got infrastructure up there. We've got a valve that's in the dam. We've got a pipeline that sticks through the dam. And so we're going to have to look at all of that at some point. So, but I'm not concerned with our water supply at Caw.
I mean, I know that we've talked before about it being a very resilient reservoir, like even when we've had serious drought over the last several years, that Caw has remained at good levels. But like you said, with Enid or with other communities coming in, I mean, I've never heard anybody say, oh, we're worried that maybe too many people are going to draw off of it. Do we have rights to say, no, nobody else can jump in? Like, who decides, like, who can?
The Water Resources Board has a safe yield limit, I
Okay.
believe is what it's called. And so they determine how much water can be taken out.
Okay.
So not all of the water can be taken out of the lake.
And so if somebody wanted to come in, they
Yeah,
And they were gonna
would
draw more than that
There may
limit.
not be available rights left. I don't know what the situation is there at Caw. I know that for example, there's no available water rights in Lake McMurtry that I'm aware of. I mean, we have water rights there and the city of Perry does, and that's it.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
okay, so this is a study session item, so we're not asking for any action tonight, but these are the next steps that we came up with, and this is the plan that we are looking at implementing unless we hear that you all don't think we're on the right track. So again, we're going to continue with the items that are in green here in the green box, the finished water pump station, recovered water pump station, lagoon piping, and caustic feed system. We're going to continue with Lake McMurtry as an additional raw water storage and supply. We're going to immediately start looking to replace the lime system and make those improvements to the other items there, the ozone, chlorine, ammonia, and carbon dioxide systems. And then finally, we'll rehabilitate the solids contact units, filters, replace the steel clear well, and we'll continue to evaluate the raw water pipeline and plan for those parallel crossings.
Are any of the dollars that we currently have earmarked for specific portions of that phased approach?
The only thing that we have earmarked, so when we use federal dollars, we have to comply with Davis-Bacon wage requirements, American Iron and Steel, and so we've looked at what are some projects that are smaller to where contractors are less interested in complying with all of those federal requirements. So, for example, the lagoon cleaning / piping part that you see up there, we're going to use our water fund reserves. So that's our local funds for that. That's the only thing that we've got that we're looking at. There's nothing specifically of those funds that, for example, the grants that we received, we can use those for improvements at the water treatment plant, but it doesn't specifically say which improvements.
Which improvement? Are there timelines attached to the funding that we've received from outside of us? I know like the ARPA dollars have to be spent quickly, actually.
Yeah. I don't know the exact time frame on that, but I know we've got time to do that, given the projects that we have. And with the directive that we got from the EPA, they're still working on the application process. So they've told us we're getting the money, but you still have to apply, and they haven't even created the application yet. So we're okay there too.
on your previous slide, is the priority order yellow, green, red, or is there a crossover between those blocks? You noted a couple times yellow sort of being the urgent right now.
Well, only because those are the projects we haven't started on yet. They're the next thing in line. We've already started on the things in green, and we're red, which is Lake McMurtry. Obviously, we can't do anything to the Caw pipeline or raw water delivery system, which includes the pump station, until we have the additional raw water storage in place. So, and that's also going to take some time because of the cost and our borrowing limitations. That project's going to take us a couple of years to do. So, but in the meantime, these other things that are in the yellow, like I said, lime needs to be replaced yesterday. So we need to get started on our project to replace the lime system and then upgrade these other systems. And some of that behind the scenes work has already happened. I know the water treatment plant staff has already had a consultant out to look at the ozone system, and they're making a report and recommendations on how to upgrade that.
It can seem really serious when we're having these conversations about something so important to our community, something that we all rely on every day as we turn on our taps and showers and things. And I appreciate so much the work that you're doing to plan and to replan and to be efficient and effective. But I just want to be clear, we don't have a concern about the safety or viability of our water system today. We're really planning for the future.
That's right. We're still continuing to produce safe, clean drinking water, and I'm not aware of any concerns that we have on the ability to do that. We do need to take care of some things at the plant, but our staff that are out there are working really hard to do that. I mean, and so what that means is, for example, the lime system, it's very high maintenance. They have to deal with it maybe daily. Whereas once we have a new lime system, they're not going to have to go out and visit it daily. But they're just having to, so much, it's like grease the wheel, so to speak. But they're working very hard. And, obviously there's lots of checks and balances for us. The water's tested every 2 hours, for example. So there's lots of things in place to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to.
I would say from when I toured the water treatment plant shortly after I became a counselor, and I was so impressed with the effort and the dedication of the people out there and the extent they go to make sure that things are done and the water is safe for everyone. So, just good job on their part, because I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, thank you. They do work really hard, and their staff's down right now. So we've got openings that need to be filled, and I would, I know not all of you were able to make it to the water treatment plant, but the invitation's open. We would love to have you come out and give you a tour of these facilities firsthand. I think once you're standing there looking down into the filter gallery, or looking at some of the other things, you get a firsthand knowledge of what we're dealing with.
I think that lime system was what I remember most.
Yeah, limes, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think it. Do you need to jump in?
I just also would like to say that the group that's in this room has done a lot of, in addition to the staff at the water treatment plant who do yeoman's work, in terms of providing safe water, these folks have done yeoman's work in terms of telling us what we need to do to have safe drinking water 50 years from now, at less expense than what we originally thought.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the plan itself, it's, I think I don't know if we used the analogy before. I mean, we would love to be able to buy a Cadillac here, but you can't necessarily do that right away. And so we've got to make sure we've got transportation somehow.
That's right.
Right. So I appreciate the fact that you guys have been able to go out and find a plan that covers what we need it to cover at a more reasonable expense. Because, these upgrades, they just have to be made, and we have to get this stuff done and we have to be able to pay for it. So I think the plan itself, in terms of the phasing, makes a ton of sense in terms of what needs to happen. Certainly the functionality of the water plant itself, we've got to make sure it's able to continue to function. Putting the local storage in place so that then we can take down the pipeline where we need to and make the improvements we need there. It all makes a ton of sense, and I think is easy to explain and for people to understand why we would be phasing it the way we're phasing it. I guess the question for the rest of us now is to figure out how we can go out and find more funding to be able to do this as quickly as possible and to get these projects up and running and not just sitting on the shelf until somebody finds some money. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And that is a priority of the city manager's office. These folks tell us what we need to do and how much money we need, and it's our job to figure that out, and we're already at work on that.
Well, I think should be a priority of the trustees and in our roles in terms talking to other legislators and talking to folks around our communities. And we know there's a municipal league conference coming up where I'm sure there will be conversation about finding funding for infrastructure projects and that sort of thing. So it's important for all of us, I think, to chip in and figure out ways to make sure this stuff gets done. So.
Yeah, and I agree. And I did want to add, I'm glad you mentioned it, or somebody did. I'm standing up here giving this presentation, but this didn't happen by itself and with just me. Lots of people in this room helped out. Monty Carnes, Bill Millis, Candy Starring, Andy Dorflinger. The city manager's office was a huge help. We've been meeting every week to 10 days, kind of talking about this for the past couple of months. And so just a lot of help, and I appreciate everyone.
Absolutely.
Did I say everything? Oh, James Driscoll. Sorry, I didn't mention you.
Have we utilized the state revolving fund before?
Yes. So the
For
Water
Water
2040.
2040?
Yes, those are state revolving fund loans. And I think we've used them before on other things, but I don't know what. We actually just got approved last week for a clean water state revolving fund for the South Interceptor sewer project. So.
I know so much of the infrastructure dollars are going into that program specifically.
Yeah, and we've given them our needs before, so they know we have a lot of needs. They've got a project priority list that kind of shows projects and tens of millions of dollars out by the side of those projects. So there's a lot of Stillwater on that list.
And I wish I'd have brought it with me. I did not, but I do have a balance here, what we have and what's outstanding and when it comes due. We asked for that information a couple of days ago in a run-up to figuring out the financing.
Yeah. I wonder, have we looked in if the terms are different with all of the funding going in? Are a lot of the federal programs are able to provide, there's not matching funds, like we've seen Paul Pregel talk about that at the airport, that the government has removed those, or maybe they're able to provide more favorable loan terms or things like that. I didn't know if the SRF has been.
SRF has, they've had some things, for example, the loan terms are 30 years. So I think that's probably the max that you can do there. But they've had some loan forgiveness lately, so you could get, it's up to like $1 million that you can get of loan forgiveness for loans that are in excess of $5 million, I believe. And so they do have some programs like that. There's other loans that we could get, like we've probably mentioned in here WIFIA before. That's a loan program, but there again, we would have to come up with half the money. They would loan you a couple $100 million today, but you would have to have half of the money for your project. So now we're borrowing it from somewhere else. We don't have $100 million. And then they allow you to defer paying your loan back starting 5 years after you finish, and you can take 35 or 40 years. There's all kinds of stuff. It's like, I guess, all the like creative lending you see at banks. But anyway, the loan forgiveness thing with SRF is definitely an interest to us.
Yeah, $1 million normally sounds like so much, but when you're talking about $100 million or more, it doesn't really seem to make quite the dent that it
I understand.
could. I guess the only other thing that I was thinking was that I was hearing this last week at a professional conference that so many of these grant programs and federal programs are allowing you to use other programs and grants as leveraged dollars and matching if there is a match. So, and I know ARPA is a part of that. So I know we kind of are holding a pot of money right now that's going to be deployed. I didn't know if it made sense to kind of look into those kinds of terms but before we deployed those dollars, if they would be useful in helping us leverage as matching for other things. So.
If you're interested, our balance, the 30-year balance, as of 6/30 of '22, and that includes the Interceptor, the new Interceptor, is 36.8. $36.8 million. So you might.
We assumed. And
These
that'll
aren't
get
the-
paid back eventually.
They're not the fun, exciting things to pay for, are they?
They're not.
Well, the stuff you need to pay for.
Stuff you need to pay. That's right.
Thank you, David. Thank you, your team.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you.
everybody who's been working on this project, and I'm looking forward to talking more about finding money and starting projects. So. Trustees, anything further on this issue? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the SUA meeting. Please vote. Vote 5-0. We're now adjourned. Thank you all.